Hello, my name is Joseph Christos Thrice. My birth name is Joe Stanley. I am looking to expose evil in the world. I am looking to start a flood of love, light, and knowledge, whether that be forbidden knowledge or divine knowledge, and to set humanity free so it can be on a new path. We live in a current world that will pretty much paint a picture that the world is progressing and that things are getting better, which isn't a lie, but it is still just as barbaric as it has always been. I am looking to give knowledge to the public and to humanity to right the wrongs and to set us on a new path. And hopefully that one will be of purity, of light and love, that we may not always be able to get rid of all of the evil in the world, though we may try. We currently, as many people have said in our culture and in our society, are living in a digital age now. We are living in a world filled with technology, which once again, a lot of great innovation, but a lot of awful things. And it is now easier to hide all the evil things that are happening than ever before. And people also, we are also living in the information age. So we are also having as uh, the most information we have ever had. And that once again is a blessing. And I've been given this gift, and I hope many people can get the spark that has been lit in me, lit in them. And those who misuse and abuse fire, I hope that we can stop them, and I hope that everything can come to light in the light of day. We do not have to live in eternal night. This world is light and darkness, day and night, the sun and the moon. So, like I said, I'm speculating on a lot of information, but it is very accurate, and it is more accurate than you'll hear from any mainstream source. It is more accurate than all of the people who are now puppets for this system, excuse me. And information is gatekept more than ever. And like I said before, knowledge is for everyone. So we find ourselves in a world that is analog to digital. We find ourselves in a world that is both spiritual and physical, many fighting a psychological or a spiritual war. And we live in a world that is not only three-dimensional, but four-dimensional. And many people have said things about a matrix, which, if you go back to the origins and the etymology, would stand for mater, which is mother. And that is how this world is run basically right now. It is run by a matrix. And I look to set us free from that as well. Though we may not be able to get rid of some aspects of it, we can at least make it known to everybody. And if everyone does know, now that I've been isolated for a good portion of my life for certain reasons, this being one of them, I believe that a lot of people know, if not everyone knows, even if they deny it to themselves, or they are a part of it. And so if I do not present this as best as I can, just know it's because of the abuse that I have taken mind, body, and soul. But we do live in a matrix, and I do believe that we live in a hive mind, and I believe that most of the world has been corrupted to follow a psychological operation that they are probably not a willing part of, but for a simple life and to have a life, a lot of people do these things in the name of just surviving and keeping humanity alive, thinking that we would perish if the truth were to get out, or if this knowledge, if evil were to thrive more than it does. And I will say that this is an illusion. The duality we live in is not balanced, and this world is not balanced. And that's what I'm fighting for, at least a balanced world, so that then we may have the potential to live in a world that is more based in light and love. And along with this hive mind comes mind control, Synthetic telepathy, people who are wired and jacked into their system. Their thoughts can be read. Their thoughts are given to databases and servers all over the world, and their thoughts and their mind, body, and soul is connected to these digital systems or this matrix. Many have their lives routed by this matrix, sending them on paths their whole life and course correcting and setting them wherever they may go. Others were born with this knowledge and they are holding oaths, swearing to keep this secret, and others come into this knowledge later at life. I don't know if people in the middle of their life are given this knowledge. I don't know if the younger generations are born all with this knowledge. As I said, I've been isolated, and that's for a reason. I just wish I knew why I was isolated. I feel like I'm the last to know. I always feel like I'm superior in some ways and inferior in other ways. And this information, it's definitely crippling to anyone, but it's crippling to me as well. So, but as I said, some people are wired and jacked into this system, and some are prisoners of this system, and we are all slaves to the system. And myself, I have been wired or jacked into this system, this matrix, and basically it's our televisions, it's our radios, it's our streaming platforms, it's the internet. Everything is connected now. And with that comes scary, awful things. And the initiations and rituals in this world are even scarier. And that's basically what I am a part of. And I am also source code for this information. And that was kind of what my purpose was with these rituals. And this is why I'm giving this information. But with what has come of my life is that my mind, my body, is interacting in this four-dimensional type of way, which means my mind is now connected to the outside world, and there are many like this, and some are kept prisoner until they behave, whatever that is supposed to mean, though it is as far as I can see it, it's a deterrent from living a true, honest, loving life and letting truth and freedom ring. But when I go on to the internet, my mind connects to the internet in a way that it will torture me and give me subliminal messages, subliminal cues. And this is a sub-language that is based on ancient teachings of a twilight language. Though this is a theory, I can say it's rooted into the theory of Atlantis, where all cultures, all spiritual and religious teachings are one and the same. It's a God of infinite faces and creation of infinity. And just to give a little more clarification, my experiences basically in my torture and these experiments, basically I could be watching a video, and if someone is physically hurt in that video, however the connection is translated or converted, say someone gets hit in the head, I will have pain in my head, I will get hit in the head. And that's how scary this technology is, and that's how deep this technology and information goes, and that's how well guarded it is. And when I say I have had to be a one-man army, I am not lying. It's basically me against the internet, against the matrix, against all of these actors, all of these people in these special ops or these psychological operations and covert activities and all this espionage. I find myself in the middle, and because of this, it makes me even more of a target. But I stand true to what I believe, and that's about that. Also, what comes with this is a serialization of everything in this world, human beings being one of them. In the past, months of my life, They have serialized my medication, my food, my water. I am unable to get these products without having them tampered. People come into my home and steal it and replace it with other items. And all of this, once again, is for operations and to test people to their limits. But this serialization is dangerous, and this serialization is connected to everyone's minds who are in it, once again, enslaving them, and I look to set them free as best I can. Our eyes have also been digitized, and people can get remote viewing from my eyes, from my perspective, and this is the same for anybody, or at least it's a possibility for everybody. I do not know the limits of insiders. I do not know past my knowledge. I just know that this information is true. Also, what comes with my experiences is that we are working on immortality. We can heal and regenerate our bodies, our minds, our souls, and this is a great thing as well. But when we put people in these situations to fight for their life, or to just always fight for a side or fight for the ruling class, no one is a winner. But my spiritual teachings of chakras, and there's many other names for these things, but basically spiritual or energy points in the body, they are now digitized, and it can be used as light within you, whether that be through electricity or other means. It can now heal and regenerate, and this has also created people that go out and seek, we call them psychic vampires. And basically, these people will cannibalize people for their energy, for their light. And so there's this infinite war also occurring with this, where people need to protect themselves as best as possible. If they protect others, they need to hide themselves. They have to camouflage themselves as evil or camouflage themselves as whatever. And this is for protection, but it's also a sick way to live. You can have loved ones treat you horribly, and they are doing this so they can, better help you behind closed doors. And that's a world, once again, I do not know. Alongside this, we also have genetic engineering, bioengineering, and hacking of all of this technology, just the same as if you would hack a computer. So, once again, my body, my mind, my soul, my thoughts, my speech, which is why I'm having trouble speaking, it can be hacked. And that's really scary, but it's a true fact. My life is living proof. And we go into the darker parts that go back a little bit more in time, with genetics and eugenics, where we're trying to create the perfect human beings. And that goes right alongside immortality and having human beings live. And because of the knowledge I know, I have no trouble believing that it could be or is a possibility someday or now that we can transfer consciousness into a new vessel. And for all I know, it's hard to know what life was like in the days of the analog world or the ancient world. But many of the ancients had this knowledge, which makes me suspect that these things could have always existed. Who knows? Telepathy could always existed. I can't say that. I don't know. But basically, DNA, and pretty much any chemical change in your body, any anything going on within your mind, body, or soul can be changed, altered, or at least magnified and researched. As I said, we know probably how to cure most types of diseases, fight against viruses, allergens, pathogens, etc. And we also probably know, like I said, if we can figure out telepathy and all of that, we probably know how to cure all mental illness as well. And so you wonder, why all this is happening? Well, it's obvious that it's because of money. Money, greed, and corruption, and feeling power. And power always corrupts. Once again, another thing I would like to stop. And what comes with cannibalizing people for energy and all this hacking of the brain and the body, mind, and soul, as I do have some of these powers, and that you come to find that it's supernatural, meaning supernatural or extraordinary. These things are normal now in our world. Who knows what it was like before, as I said, but what comes with that is this invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing, where people can literally control people's bodies. And I can't speak any more on that other than my experiences where I know people have been piloting my body, which, if you go into government research or any of these technologies that are out there, like I said, whenever you see research on rats or dogs or any animals, basically, these are things that they're doing to human beings, and the only way that they can give that message to the world and other scientists and other people is through through that kind of language. So it's, once again, I've been through a subliminal, subconscious neural linguistic programming, and many of these people, if not everyone, is part of this, and they all learn in different ways, and there's different schools of thought for it, but that's the case. So, with that kind of body snatching kind of thing, um, there's a term, and it is called psychic driving. And so, based on how people are programmed and the knowledge people have from spying and all that kind of thing, people know every detail of my life and every one of my thoughts and all my responses and impulses and triggers. And so, people can psychically drive people just from that. And then, like I said, if they have been turned into a digital version, um, that gets into the body snatching kind of thing. So we are basically piloting humans' minds and piloting their bodies and all these technologies and all that crazy kind of stuff. Um, but basically, as someone, as myself, who is jacked into the system, it's hard to tell what's illusion and what's real. A lot of people, like I said, camouflage to make it seem like they're like me, when maybe they were just trained to mimic what someone like me experiences. So I think everyone is part of this hive mind. Um, Reality, some people could be part of this hive mind. Some part of it could be hive mind only for these psychops. Some could be in this hive mind or jacked into the system, like I said, as prisoners or as test subjects. There's a lot going on. And alongside this, we now live in a Nazi-esque surveillance society. And this is, once again, with brute force, just as the ruling class has always dictated. And we are also all wired to a digital grid. And everything that has been made um, is now controlled. And this is controlled by satellites to supercomputers. And like I said, all these data servers and databases. They store all this knowledge, and once again, it's all connected. And once again, to give the concept of the matrix, these are the type of things that the matrix will reroute in addition to the serialization of, like I said, every product. I'm sorry I didn't explain that as best I can, but just trying to get through this. So we know that all this exists, and for people who are trying to be initiated, and as we know, hazing exists from anything to college fraternities and all that stuff, and there is a connection once again to secret societies or occult information, forbidden knowledge, divine knowledge, but it trickles down, but everyone is now kind of a part of it, and they're kind of, in addition to a guard, they're kind of like a prison guard. And people are always, we live in a society where we're always checking people, and anybody who is not up to a certain standard, they're meant to fight for their life or just fight for people's entertainment. And when I say that millions have been invested on me, not only in the testing, but to play a part in manipulating me or participating in my torture. That is where our society finds ourselves. And I can't say what portion of the population does this or if everyone is. Like I said, as my isolation, it puts me in a certain position where I can't fully speak on that. But I do know millions of people in this country can, and millions in the world can, and I hope that they speak up. But we like to think that this they, most people talk about they, right? And we want to think it's just the elite, the 1%. It's now a majority of society, of the world. 12% of us in the U.S. are millionaires, and that is across all races, somewhat equally. Obviously, we have majority white, but um, it's a pretty fair balance. So we know that all races in this country are doing that, and so it leads me to believe, yes, it's happening all along the world. And then once again, we have the government, and that's the government itself, all the branches that control order, all the government agencies, all the government workers, all the people affiliated with the government. That would be social media, and every company that can be involved is involved with that kind of thing. That's why the government has um, a hand in everything, and why these psychops are everywhere, because everyone has basically given up in a sort of way where the government is in everybody's life. You talk about Big Brother, the all-seeing eye, and as we know, the all-seeing eye is on the $1 bill, and the founders were Masons, which also is a symbol for them. So once again, that goes with secret societies, and also what comes with this is every public figure kind of being puppeted around, everyone in Hollywood being puppeted around. And as I said, there's like a language that goes back to spiritual knowledge, which is the Twilight language. It's been called the Enochian or angelic language, the language of the birds. And this was basically giving subconscious cues or subliminal language with an intended purpose. Sometimes it's on purpose, and other times it's coincidence. But as the language has been written over time, it carries all this knowledge, all this culture, all this history, which once again is documented, controlled, and routed by the Matrix. And once again, this is, it existed in analog form. So, um, but basically, what comes with like the torture and all that is it turns the language into something else. And instead of being divine knowledge, it surrounds you by fire. It surrounds you with, awful, awful things. And it reprograms your mind to only see the evil. Um, so, to give an example to try and go into, I'm not gonna, it's a dense subject. But basically, when the mafia, they were being tapped by the government, they had kind of like this code where, if things were going not according to plan or something like that, some guy from the mafia calls someone and they're like, "Hey, tell my mother I'm not going to be home for dinner." And of course, we know that they're not talking about being home for dinner with their mother. They're talking about something else, correct? Um, so it's like that type of programming that goes into our language. And within the 18th century and the 19th century and up to now, basically, we've had catchphrases and all this kind of things. And we have doublespeak as known in 1984. It's like all our words in the English language, as far as I can speculate. I don't know about other languages. I know it goes back to the Romance languages and Latin. But we have pretty much every word, every catchphrase can mean something good. It can mean something bad. It can be something ambiguous. And if you look to a lot of origins of the catchphrases that we use, a lot of them are pretty dark, and we go to songs, children's rhymes, ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes to ashes, we all fall down. Very dark. our catchphrases are no different. And like I said, me being source code, like I painfully have to know all this information, and it's a lot to take in. You know what I mean? But basically, once again, this language, despite its negative parts, there are great, parts to it. It's a gift, it's a burden, it's a curse. That's how it goes, and that is a part of duality that I can at least align with somewhat. And it's to create digital human hybrids, and we're up. It's up to humanity to decide if that is a good thing or a bad thing. I think up till now, everything up till now is progress, right? It's to set things on a path and to expose people to this publicly, so we can start to have a real conversation about it. So, once again, my life is another story completely. But as we go into Hollywood and these subliminal messages and their connection to the government, and to pretty much one by one um, turn people into this programmed digital version of themselves, or to have different knowledge, and to translate and convert and transfer information in different means. You could watch any video on the internet, and between the AI in your head, the digital things that are going on in your head and body, or people who may be in your head, or hacking your mind and your thoughts, so you understand, and then you then can understand other concepts. Like I said, you could understand. You could look up stuff about computer programming, and then look up stuff about, say, car mechanics, and if you see different words that are similar, your mind will start to recognize the patterns. And so it's like you can kind of understand anything, and that doesn't mean you're going to be a master of it, but you will be, it will be easy to understand, and the world opens up to you in a way that is wonderful. Wonderful. It's a thing of wonder, but it's also can be used as a horrible thing. You know what I mean? Like I said, with like that mafia code, you can start sending messages with all this other stuff to send out negative messages, to target people, to hurt people. But back to the connection of Hollywood. Basically, with the ruling class, these secret societies that have always been embedded and have an origin of espionage, like I said, protecting people, being as guards and gatekeepers, all these kind of things. Basically, myself, I am part of, in addition to being source code for this material, which once again, I would like to state, all people are being turned into source code, but it is the fact that I have delved deeper into it, and because of my programming and the psychological operation around myself, I have a lot more information than the majority of these people, and even people who are insiders, I would guess. I have information that they don't have. Once again, speculation, but that would be my guess, because there's been a lot of effort into teaching me how to become a teacher of this knowledge. Once again, I wish I could present it better, but due to the torture, I can only do so much. But so, excuse me. But with the Hollywood that we know, you look into these rituals, these initiations, and the secret societies and the ruling classes alongside. Hollywood has always been attached to that since the beginning. Excuse me. I have something in the air that's bothering me. But Hollywood comes from a spiritual teaching that connects to the Tree of Life, which once again connects to the theory of Atlantis. And the Tree of Life is in all these cultures, all these spiritual teachings. And also at the same time, it connects to this Jesus Christ ritual that has been done over and over. I don't know, when this was created, but I know I am one of these individuals. and it's also tied to scapegoat rituals, and it's also tied to human sacrifice and death rituals. Once again, we want to protect these type of evil things from seeing the light of day, but I am every one of those things, and with the knowledge I'm going to give within with the music and within TV and movies and culture, I will try to do that. I am, I think, being attacked by something right now in the air, so I may stop, but I'm gonna keep going. And if I keep coughing, then I'm gonna stop and then restart it, and then we'll go part one, part two, however we're gonna do this. But basically, um, with the tree of life, Hollywood, a lot of people will tell you that it's just a name of whatever, and once again, this is the misinformation and disinformation we use to keep things a secret. But so we have that connected to the tree of life, with the wood being a sacred thing in many cultures, if not all, in some way. So it's the holy or sacred wood. It is the holly tree, which you can look up, which once again would, there's druidic lore, and that can be seen as a magic wand for casting and casting spells. There are pagan roots to this, and once again, a lot of occult knowledge. And once again, I talk about Jesus Christ. And as we know, the colors for Christmas are green and red, and this holly tree is green with red berries. And in many cultures, this is for protection and immortality, and wards off evil. Just trying to read this. And so, Hollywood and our culture has always been tied to these death rituals and human sacrifice, and they've always been kept a secret. And the amount of people who know and participate, like I said, in these rituals has only grown. Could, like I said, be everyone. I don't know, because of my isolation. But basically, just give an example of Hollywood. There's a reference to rings, right? And I'm not going to go into a lot of stuff so much, but just to give, how Hollywood and movies take from what it was. You have a reference of Plato's work to the ring, and that goes to the Lord of the Rings. And there's a more sinister thing about the ring, you're ringing in your ears. That's why they call it ringing in your ears, because it has to do with all this telepathic kind of information and how your mind works and how you hear things. You get a certain ring, and when you get married, you have a ring. And then there's also the rings of Saturn, and like I said, that'd be like the more darker connotations. And then you had in the Marvel movies, basically you had the rings to control the world, and that's exactly what the information that's being portrayed. Like I said, I wish I could uh, fully go over this source code, if you will, and that's what it is. It's divine knowledge, but it's also source code, and it kind of connects all these concepts together, and then you kind of know everything in a sort of way. But once again, you'd be a fool to think you know everything. I believe in, if you have real wisdom, you know that you know nothing. And I do, with my ego aside, I do believe in that. I really do. Um, but yeah, so there are a lot of, just to give another piece of information, going to the darker side of things. I have in my town, there's a pizza place. I don't remember the name of it, but it's basically a piece of pizza upside down with an eye in it, referencing to the all-seeing eye. And this eating pizza, it goes to pie, which you want your piece of the pie, which I believe, I don't know for a fact, but I feel pretty confident. This goes to Proto-Indo-European languages, PIE. And like I said, this is how people can hide stuff in any type of information. And pizza, if you break this up in a certain way, it would be pizza. And I don't remember the spelling of za would be Sache. And you can go look that up in the origin of that language. I don't remember it. I don't have it on hand. But once again, like you would never think that's what pizza means or one of the connotations that can be. But Pete, also known as Peter, was Simon. Um, one of the apostles, came the first pope, I believe. Um, and basically, one of the known quotes is "Do as I say, not as I do." And we are currently living in an age of an awful lot of that. Um, but yeah, this pizza thing, talk about these awful dark things, the Pizzagate, thing, and I don't really know much about that. I only looked into a little bit because I could see that whatever happened to the individual who was, went crazy, and went on a homicidal kind of shooting thing at that pizza restaurant, um, that's tied into this. They saw a spark and they heard something and they felt something and that made them go crazy. They may have gone crazy, but the information that they were thinking, I feel, is pretty accurate. And when people are talking about, the stuff attached to that with, email servers of people talking about, presidents or whatever, and in our politics or any order, sending emails talking about pizza and hot dogs, they're talking about more people. And once again, to go to culture, break it up, it's cult, sure, right? And I'm not the first person to say this. But what comes with that is harvesting, and back then, you had cultivation, which could be with a K, but cultivation, and so that ties the cult together and this harvesting thing, and it becomes this harvesting of souls, harvesting of people, harvesting of culture, all these different things. Um, so once again, I mean, etymology is a big part of this, and the beauty of all this stuff, is in the synchronization, syncretism. I'm not saying it right, but basically the syncretion. I can't say it. My apologies, everyone. But to have a syncretism. I guess that's it. I'm sorry. I know the word very well, but like I said, messing with my language. But it's basically a big component of carrying this collective consciousness, this culture, this knowledge, this history, and it carries the real truth. And the winners of wars write the history, right? But they take culture along with it, and it sets it on a path so that we can know where everything came from, and know that it's rooted like a tree. It's all rooted in the same thing. We all have the same roots when you go back, and that's why I very much believe in uniting all religions, uniting all spiritual paths, uniting all cultures, all history, all paths of life, all walks of life. And that's a big thing that I would like to see in my world. And I don't want to just see it in certain aspects of the world, especially knowing how many people in the mainstream are influenced by this occult knowledge, divine knowledge. It should be used for good and it shouldn't be hidden. And we all have the same roots. So that's what unites us. And so that's why many people are so together on these psychological operations and this world order and all these things. But once again, we still have the same oppressors that we've always had, Um, so just to end this before I get into more of the kind of information of how it's embedded into our actual culture, meaning like the movies and TV and music. I'm gonna kind of just kind of go over, you know, um, how we like to camouflage information, and for all I know, this could go back 400 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, maybe even before that, maybe even before into oral traditions, before these things could be read, at a certain point in time, up till very recently, actually, people couldn't read. The majority of the population couldn't read. And so, you know, what comes with that is that all these people showing two sides of something, or this cosmos struggle for balance, this fight between good and evil. We like to present that story because it helps us, grounds us, and inspires us, right? It definitely inspires me. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I want to fight for good. I want to fight against evil. And so, like I said, I'm not here to speculate on who's good, who's evil, just that this back and forth exists. These two sides exist. I mean, you look at our politics in America, it's the left wing and the right wing, Republican and Democrat, liberal and conservative. And, many people have speculated that the Republicans are controlled opposition, which will go into a little bit more with the TV and the subliminal messages. But basically, a lot of the Republican, the American, the old ways of America and all that culture, it's getting swallowed up by this newer culture. And once again, they all need to be united. They all need to be nourished, and everyone should know it and know all the philosophies and all the culture behind it. And we put that together, and we put that to all the immigrants and all the new people that come into this country, and we bring their cultures in. And it really is that simple. Um, so I'm just going to kind of go over it a little bit, and then I guess I'm going to end this video, and then we'll do a part two, you know. So basically, as I said, you had the oral traditions, and so who knows when these really started. But so we had the ancient secret societies, and we have modern secret societies. And as far as the modern secret societies, it basically can be, it could be the Masons, the Lions Club, the Knights of Templar, which is where the Masons supposedly got a lot of teachings from, and Knights of Columbus, Elks Lodge, American Legion, Moose International, Kiwanis, and even Rotary International, which you might not understand or see the connection, but is once again it's someone who has influence over the culture and how things are ordered. And so that's what currently is running stuff. And so we had the Enlightenment period and the Renaissance period, and that goes back 100 years. So once again, trying to make this prophecy come true of a new dawn and a flood of light and love, beyond like the subliminal stuff or all the darkness. Like, it is rooted in something good. You know what I mean? I mean, that's why so many believe in fighting for it, right? It's just, once again, like I said, the concealment of darkness in order to do that. I think that's the mistake that we've made throughout all human history, and I think most of the people who are a part of it, they wouldn't deny that if they were allowed to speak it. And I hope that they can. I hope they are freed from this, and anyone who's a prisoner of this, that they once they're freed, they can talk about it, and then we will have more information, and then we don't have to hide in the darkness, and we don't have to hide the darkness. But just a little bit more on Masons. You have the York Rite and the Scottish Rite and the Shriners. And basically, we have York in Britain. And then we have York turned into New York, which is the Empire State, which is one of the big hubs in America. The other hub being LA, Los Angeles, the City of Angels. And there are lots of LAs, but that's the hub in America, and that's where Hollywood is, right? So you have New York, which is maybe more business oriented or something like that. But yeah, so anyway, and so those are the more modern things, the ancient secret societies, and like I said, because I have not been able to use technology because of the torture and all these remote torture weapons, direct energy, microwaves, sonic weapons, sound weapons, awful stuff, radiation weapons, all these awful things that I've been sadly exposed to. And I have knowledge about that, but we won't get into that. So these ancient secret societies, like I said, they are rooted in espionage, sadly. But so you have like I said, from Jewish tradition, you have the Kabbalah, which is a big proponent of the tree of life, though it is in everything. We have the Merkabah. We have sacred geometry, which ties to a lot of different schools of thought and teachings. But it goes with alchemy, it goes with hermetics. There's a lot of mystery schools from all those kind of things, and they all kind of, like I said, they all converge on each other. And I'm sorry I can't say syncretionism. Oh, I said it. Great for me, right? So now you got the word. That's a big component of everything. If you look that up, it's basically combining different cultures after a war, or when society different cultures become a new society, and basically it is a way to unify all of them and start a new path for that society. That's a big proponent. But you go into the Yakuza and the Triads. Both of those are still alive and well as they are, and they go back to ancient times. You know what I mean? But yeah, a lot of people like to think of them like the mob, Trinidad, or like the mob or something. But yeah, it's basically spiritual schools, And I'm sorry I can't, get correct if it's Japanese or Chinese or anything like that. But any of these that I'm about to say, you can look up. And once again, there are secret societies, espionage, anything with samurais or anything like that. They all are connected. Everything is connected. Once again, Atlantis is real. And Atlantis is from Greek theology, and that goes into Pythagorean, which is the Pythagorean Brotherhood, which is one of them, another society. But I'm a big fan of Greek stuff, so I go towards that kind of stuff. And that's also where Hermes went, and then you had the Greeks take over Egypt, and you had the Romans, obviously, and that'd be the Mithraic cults. But yeah, for Japanese and Chinese, you had the Black Dragon Society. You had the White Lotus Society, also in Rome, where the illusion. I can't read it. Sorry, but the illusion in I don't remember, but I know that's from Roman culture. You can go look up that, and I'm sure you'll find it. It's basically spelled ELEUSINIAN, I believe. So I'm not able to pronounce it correct. So my apologies for not speaking these correct or having the right pronunciation. I wish I could go through more and, like I said, pronounce everything right, get it right. But certain circumstances stop me from doing that. But once again, you go to Egyptian again. They have the Osirian Brotherhood, and like I said, the LCI. All of these teachings about the afterlife, which kind of translate now to anyone who becomes initiated. Once they're initiated, they become dead, which I'll get into in the second part of this. But basically, who knows what it meant in Egyptian times. Like I said, I don't have certain knowledge, and maybe there is no, maybe it was for the afterlife, and now we have renamed it, reclaimed it as something else. And like I said, so once you become initiated or become this hybrid human, you become dead, and you can be an angel or a demon or what have you. But many of the afterlife rituals from the Egyptian schools of thought, they apply to how you get into heaven or hell, or you basically cross over to the other side. Once again, could be a reference to Jesus on the cross. You have Robert Johnson, I believe, who is a blues artist, and he went to the crossroads and sold his soul. So that's why a lot of these people in Hollywood or whatever, now the population society at large, they sell their souls, and so they're dead once again. I'll get into that a little bit more in part two, like I said. But like I said, you have also pagan cults. You have all the you have the shinobi. You have all the Indian traditions. in the Buddhism and the Hinduism. There's societies from there, and there are the tantric traditions. And like I said, all I wrote down was tantric traditions because I do not want to butcher the language and the pronunciation. You guys will have no idea what I'm saying. But, I have a lot of respect for that. There are, like I said, there are some aspects of all of these that I don't like, with the acceptance of like duality and stuff like that. Um, but it's obviously got its own place. Duality here does exist in different ways. You know what I mean? Yin Yang is a very knowledgeable symbol, and then you have mantras, from Indian culture, and like I said, the chakras earlier. And these are all different ways to communicate certain messages. Subconsciously. Like I said, it has an intended meaning into the people that have the knowledge. They will understand it. Only the initiated understand it. So, like I said, I've done this all by myself. Other than people who may have been in my spirit or soul bonding with me. I know that might be over some people's heads, but that's how I see it. A lot of these people soul bonding me have tortured me, like I said, as part of this torture ritual, scapegoat ritual, Jesus Christ ritual, kind of reenactment kind of thing. But get into that later. So let's see, is there anything else here? And I'd just like to state, like, just an example of how we still have stuff today. Back in Roman times, they had collegia and guilds. And if you look at that today, once again, going to Hollywood and how we keep using these kind of concepts and how we respect the culture and want to carry it on to the things that we remember so we can, teach humanity and have a path that has connected and unites us all. Collegia, can go to our modern day college. And once again, I already said, like the Greek fraternities and sororities, there's a connection there. And then the guilds, this can be to tons of, there's tons of guilds, from Britain up to where we are now. And once again, you go, once again, to Hollywood, and it would be the Actors Guild. And so they have Workers Guilds and all that. So once again, the tie again to, putting culture with the guilds, and the Actors Guild putting it to Hollywood, and how that's a very big gatekeeper kind of community, and how they are gatekeepers of this knowledge. Once again, there is a duality to all this, but I do think that Hollywood could have done a much better job with certain aspects, and the fact that they would let certain the writers and authors in Hollywood or any of our culture, when they are kind of like protecting it with like a fire around it, and anyone who gets lost in negative thinking or whatever, basically these people have died for thousands of years or hundreds of years, and that's something I am deeply against. And these are everybody belongs, everyone can be saved, everyone can be redeemed, and to burn people at the stake, so to speak. You know what I mean? I don't think that's right. We should never go witch hunting people. We should never be pointing our finger at people saying you don't get to know this knowledge. Knowledge is for everyone. And once again, this gatekeepers kind of stuff and these secret societies, they lend themselves to having a certain status and a certain power, and then it's always corrupt. It always turns people corruptible, and that's, I don't want to fucking be. Excuse me, trying not to swear this whole time, but I don't want to be corrupting people. You know what I mean? And so, I can only speak that everybody belongs, and we torture people that don't go by our one way of uniting all the cultures. Once again, I said it's a beautiful thing. It's a thing of awe, and it's a wonder, and it has left me with endless wonder, and it's a gift. But I have been surrounded by torture just because I want to give this information to everybody, and that's not right. And the fact that all this is attached to the military and all this government stuff now, and the surveillance state and the technology, a lot of evil is allowed to happen, and a lot of these people are exercising evil tendencies and pure evil impulses and intentions. Once again, this is not something that I would ever stand for, and I don't want my people to stand for. I don't want my country to stand for it. You know what I mean? Um, but so, just to give you a little context, obviously, like I said, people do have wars, and there is still a war now. We have a hidden civil war, as far as I'm concerned. We have a hidden Cold War across the whole world. People trying to fight for control, but they're all doing it, in hidden ways. And a lot of it is just, like I said, psychological, spiritual warfare kind of thing. And when I said, like, if you can literally, smoke somebody and you can light them, and also, I don't even know why I know this. It's not my generation's new slang, but basically, you say, "Oh, that person got cooked," or "We're gonna cook someone." It's like doing, being a cook, which is a reference to alchemy. But what are people doing? They're going hunting people, and you know, it's not right. You know what I mean? And so you have people cooking people. And once again, just what comes to my mind, the Twilight Zone, they had an episode To Serve Man, and, Twilight Zone was one of those kind of shows that opened the door for some serious information and can transfer a lot of information to your mind and subconscious. Once again, the Twilight Zone goes back to the reference of the Twilight language. Um, but yeah, it's like you're in this twilight of in between, you know what I mean? And that's where I find myself. And, I believe I have found myself to heaven on earth, but I've been subjected to stay on hell in earth, and which keeps me in this weird purgatory. And I really hope to live a long life, and I really hope that I can get through this and escape my position and live the rest of my life in heaven and not have to have a target on my back and to be subjected to the worst crimes in all human history. Just putting it lightly. But I'm going to just, all of these wars are from gatekeeping. They want to have possession over the language, possession over the culture. And a lot of reasons why certain slang or words come into the culture is if you control the language and you control what the people's language is, and then you can slowly control the culture, and it just goes from there. So, like I said, we have the Latin languages, what came from Latin or started with it as an origin, and you have the Romance languages. That could be a certain kind of brand, if you want to call it that, or a certain connection that was keeping together certain values. You know, we have in more a little bit in more modern stuff. We have the British, and then there's like I was taught bringing up in school, you either speak French or you speak Spanish, and I do believe that that's a kind of sub cue for some type of division between those type of cultures or within the languages and fighting for over the language. um and then, like I said earlier, we have Republicans and Democrats, but it goes a little bit deeper than that, as far as I'm concerned, to just like the red side and the blue side, and that can be in different values, different cultures, different beliefs or thoughts about what's going on. Like I said, this world order thing, and it's not an accident that I grew up, and it's like the conspiracy genre, like that was kind of like a part of the mainstream, right? So like everyone kind of joked and talked about that kind of stuff, but at some point it became, right wing goes to this, conspiracy people. So all the people that stayed in that realm, they became later routed by the Matrix as Republicans. And if you didn't, then you went to the liberal side of politics. And as we know, since 2012 and 2016, that it's escalated, and you have like this new brand, as far as I'm concerned, with the rainbow, the mafia, what do they call it, the alphabet mafia, for the LGBT, And that's, once again, like, it's not just LGBT people, it's people who have certain values about what should be happening in our culture and who should control that, and they think they should, and they see things right. Everyone has aspects and philosophies that are right, you know what I mean? And obviously we want to accept everyone. I'm definitely a believer in that, you know what I mean? But I find it odd that liberals, they don't talk about conspiracy. There's no, there's no like liberal part of the conspiracy stuff, except maybe like, the white supremacy kind of stuff, which, obviously the white nationalism thing is real. Neo-Nazis still exist, but it's kind of hard to tell because of all this kind of actors kind of thing and all this stuff, which once again goes to the conspiracy side of stuff, where you have people believing that people were actors for certain things. And as we know now, it's official that, we pay protesters on both sides. And with all these psychological operations, you don't know if somebody is controlled opposition. And obviously the mainstream has been controlled by liberals, majority of the time. And once again, a lot of evil people, say about Hollywood, how it was controlled by Jewish people. And, I mean, a lot of those shows are hilarious, by Jewish comedians. Can't remember the names right now. But, I mean, people want to believe there's like this evil cabal of like Jewish people, and Jewish people have been crucified and just put through the worst circumstances and always been made a target. And yet, with all these things fighting against anti-Semitism, the mainstream doesn't have much information about Jewish culture, and it's not in our culture as much as Christianity is, where everybody knows a lot of like Bible stories and stuff like that. It's only slightly in there, you know what I mean? And like I said, a lot of the Jewish mystic schools or mystery schools, they're only in the subliminal stuff. And so before I go into rant mode, like, there's just kind of stuff like that, you know what I mean? And I think we're all kind of fighting for the same thing. I just don't want to see violence in the name, or violence in the name of anything, or violence against something, unless we all know the truth and all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, sorry for going into a rant a little bit, but it's just trying to paint a picture for how we put people on sides, and how this matrix that controls us puts us on all these other sides. So once again, you go into the, a lot of this programming and control. Once again, it's not just language. It can be colors, and like I said, with the red and blue, you could also see it as black and white, black versus white, or black and white versus, the rainbow and the color, excuse me, because at one point in time, we had TV in black and white. And when it got to color, once again, this was around the time of the civil rights and all these great things happening, people standing up for what they believe in, and the feminism and all that kind of stuff going on. And, so, once again, black and white, it could be black versus white, or black and white seeing the world in black and white versus in color. It could be light versus shadow. And there's this thing from Mad TV. I don't remember the origin of it, but it was basically spy versus spy on Mad TV. And it was, this can translate to black hats versus white hats, which is something I know exists within the hacker world. Not like I know anything about hackers, but just saying. And as we said, with the conspiracy genre, people have been divided with that. But like I said, what goes on with the black and white kind of thing, in alchemy, gold and silver can translate to the sun and moon, which is the alchemic chemical wedding. And, there's a lot of spiritual knowledge, which I'm not going to impart upon you, just to show you that there are these different lines, and so the sun can also be the father, and the moon can also be the mother. And that goes into this, once again, this hidden group, or this hidden occult information, or these oath keepers, or these gatekeepers. And you hear the family, and obviously there's a mafia connection there as well. But the family could be the mother and the father, so both of these sides are opposites, and they fight with each other all the time, just like family does. But they're all protecting this knowledge. They're all fighting for a common goal. You know what I mean? So, like I said, all these things, they could all be fighting for the same thing, just different values. And, sadly, there have been wars fought over this stuff, and a lot of people die over it. And, um, I'll go into it a little bit more, but um, the truth is that a lot of people die, and there's a lot of cover-ups and awful stuff, and I'll maybe get into that in this video, maybe not. But just to finish this up, we talk about the mainstream, and once again, there's also the underground, right? And that kind of maybe connects to the dead, or that dead concept that I was talking about before. And basically, like, if you're underground, you're dead, but it also could have other connotations, which I'm not really going to go into. But you have underground music, stuff that's only in the clubs, and only on the streets. People used to by word of mouth. Obviously on the internet it's a little different now, but people had to do a lot of work to get their music out there, or whatever they were doing. And then there's people in the mainstream who, your pop stars and all that kind of stuff. And once again, you talk about trends and people believing in values. Rock music used to be the biggest music, and hip hop has escalated up. But they did kind of kill rock music in the mainstream. So I do wonder why that happens, why the gatekeepers chose to do that. Is it because of certain messages that those type of bands were saying? And as we know, the rock bands can be connected to the underground, and then they became so big that it became the mainstream. It became the sound. So just something to think about. And then along with the family, there's royalty, and that goes back to Europe and all that kind of stuff. And there's royalty all around the world, or the imperial orders and all that kind of stuff. Once again, showing different beliefs and nationalism to just different aspects of culture. But as we know, a little bit, royalty goes back into purple, and royalty can also be seen as black. I mean, you see judges in black robes. That's tied to that connection. There's also lots of other examples. Then you have certain movements, but I'm speaking specifically about freeing Tibet, and why that was such a global thing. Why did we get into it? And I'm not going to go into it, but just certain things like that. And along with, you've heard it's raining like cats and dogs, and certain things like that, that cats and dogs never go along. Cats can be traced back to the Egyptian thing. And there's this like theory that the Sphinx used to be a dog head, and then it turned into a cat head, turned into the Sphinx. Not touching it, but I'm just saying, like, it's out there, and this kind of different schools of thought goes into the cats and dogs, and are cats liberals and Republicans dogs. Once again, I'm just kind of speculating. I'm sure everyone meshes on different sides, or the camouflage, or they're wearing different hats, as we say, for whatever purpose. You know what I mean? But once again, different division, a different way to ping pong people and not kind of know what's going on. You know what I mean? So then we have, let's see, I can barely read this, but as far as like the African colors, I lost the information that I had. Like I said, access to my computer is kind of whatever. But at one point in time, the colors were red, yellow, and green. And then at another aspect, they were red, black, and yellow. So once again, talking about who's in control, and what people or what values were part of the government, or the controlling aspect of the gatekeepers of society. So if you're interested in looking in that, and more of the African culture and how that came about, and like I said, I don't remember what colors Bob Marley had, but he was a big firm believer in, love, and all that kind of stuff, all of what I'm talking about. So, kind of look at it from that angle and do some research if you're interested. Um, and like I said, I'm just going to point out, like I said, I've talked about guardians, and we have guardian angels, you know what I mean? And that goes to the war of angels versus demons, which once again, you can see different. I'll bring up the term cross pollination. And basically, these are different cultures, you know, taking influence and becoming greater, better human beings or a better culture, society because of it. So you have the angels and demons, but like the main point is that the guardian angels, and that's where that comes from. And you have the Abrahamic religions, and you have pagans, and you have the occultism, and I would guess that they all share, the same kind of thing, but they also have differences. And then you have, one of these trends that I saw that takes place on kind of YouTube, where a lot of people do videos with plants, and that goes into, they are a plant. You've heard the term industry plant, and those are a real thing. Like I said, people are puppeted to do certain things, and that's not, I feel like that's something that takes away our freedom. One thing a lot of people don't probably know, rap artists and pop stars, a lot of them don't write their own music or their own lyrics. They have ghostwriters, you know. Um, but these plants, industry plants, they're in all industries. The science community is basically one of those kind of things where schools of thought aren't let in until like certain people like say it's okay, and some people have to fight for that, and so that's what these plants do. And on YouTube, where people are in videos with plants, they're trying to plant seeds for new types of thoughts. And once again, a lot of those are tied to starting new psychological operations or trying to get the society to all believe the same thing, which once again, I believe with some aspects of that, but on other things, it's like freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and there should not just be one narrative, and that's my problem with the mainstream, and that's obviously a problem a lot of people have with the mainstream. There shouldn't be people forbidding certain people and certain knowledge, and you know all that kind of stuff. And you know just going back, something I might have missed a little bit, you have NASA, and you had, once again, talking about different sides, you had the Cold War, and the space race between Russia and United States. And just for anyone who doesn't know, United States and Russia, both after World War II, which once again was to pretty much reroute and remap the world, um, to the people who basically were the powers that be, that had world power and want to escalate that so that they would have absolute power and have absolute brute force, which is once again something I am very much against. But you had the space race and the space exploration. And so, what comes with that at the same time, that is kind of going side by side with what was actually going with, actual space, was the fight for 3D space and the fight for 4D space, which is once again what I'm talking about. Where the mind, body, and soul kind of interacts with the physical world, and reading thoughts and mind control and all these experiments. Um, just as an example, in the 1990s and even earlier in the 80s, but I don't have the reference. Russians were putting cameras into the eyes of cats, and basically, this was the beginning of some of this horrible technology that shouldn't exist, where people have, or these cats had cameras in their head implanted, and then slowly over time, they were able to digitize what the cat was seeing and then put it on a screen. And like I said, anything they do with these clinical trials or research, they have been doing with humans pretty much alongside at the same time. So my guess is, like I said, we can see out of our own eyes, and it's then digitized. And if people, like I said, the brain doesn't have a firewall, and the brain has its own signature. So as far as how the grid or these cameras or other people see or get information with their eyes that have been digitized, if they're part of that hive mind stuff or anything like that, basically like that was the beginning of that, you know. And so now we can do it with humans, and that's a shame, you know what I mean? So are there some things that we can't stop? You know, I don't know. I think that if we fight, we could stop a lot of this surveillance or the technology, and the AI is starting to get going, and all the things that come with that, the chat GPT and all these AI things. And once again, I've already seen with my eyes this concept of updating, and obviously with the Matrix, there are different iterations that go on, right? So, yeah, we update, and like these, all this AI is all connected, and they're all connected by the same source or the government or whatever, and they're constantly, once the AI programming and algorithms, and see the algorithms on YouTube, another version of the Matrix, there are literally anything online is you know, apps, anything, all this information on your phone, which you don't have privacy, yeah, all that stuff, it's pretty much the same type thing. um but yeah, so just to end that, NASA, you know, sadly, and the Russians, all that kind of stuff, it goes into space exploration, and it goes into the mind control, which gets into the CIA and the MK Ultra and all these mind control experiments, and KGB, and how they did some, you know, anything from recognition to lights to speech patterns, and all the awful stuff I've been subjected to and tested on. So they're still doing this stuff, but they figured out a long time ago, which I will get into more. Um, so yeah, I guess I'm gonna leave it there, and then in the part two, I'm gonna go into the specifics of our culture and the TV and movie and that kind of Hollywood realm stuff, and how they do messages in that. And then the second part of that will be like the music and what's in the lyrics, and how the Twilight language and this subliminal neuro linguistic programming, how that kind of shows how these people have been slaves or prisoners or unable to say the truth, so they have to say it in the subliminal language, which is beautiful until you understand that they're not allowed to, like I said, use their freedom of speech, freedom of expression as they should. Is music a beautiful thing that's, you know, saved a lot of lives? I know it saved my life in a lot of ways, you know, but at the same time, if you're in the dark, there's no one who's allowed to just say, yes, hive mind control exists, this fucking, excuse me, this subliminal language exists, all these kind of things are real, this technology is real, we can read your thoughts, all this stuff is real, you know. And you know, all, like I said, all this divine knowledge about beautiful stuff. And then you're like, why isn't that more prevalent in our mainstream? Why do we have kind of a plastic version of the world and an artificial version of the world? It's because people are literally not allowed to say what they want or derive from the narrative, which is again what I'm fighting against. So I know I've said that a lot this video, but I know a lot of people, millions of people, billions of people feel how I feel. And I know that we know that the United States, you know, China, Russia, you know, like I said, these are the superpowers, and the United States is kind of at the forefront of kind of being like world police. And I don't think anybody should be policing anyone. And I believe that we should have freedom, and we should be going back to self-evident truths and organic conversations, and not be fighting politically. That is the most subversive way to program people. And I don't believe in propaganda, though they say all art is kind of propaganda. But we have turned everything political, and that is just because of these psychological operations and this search for just having brute force and control over everything. And I believe everyone matters, everyone belongs, everyone has a voice. So with that, I'll say love and light forever, and take care.